Story 1. The town I live in is nice enough. It's quiet, a little quaint. My dream is to move to the city once I graduate from college. I want a life where things are busier, more exciting, more alive. I live at home with my parents and my twin sister. Both of my parents are underpaid teachers, so our upbringing has been relatively modest. We've never been spoiled. We've always been told to work hard for every dollar, and gratitude for everything we have has been instilled in us since childhood. My parents must have worked really hard to save money throughout these years, because the house that we've lived in since I was a teen is pretty darn huge. Our tiny little town in general is relatively prestigious. I went online to search up the prices of houses in our neighborhood, and wow. So I do my part to extract wisdom from my parents whenever possible. Clearly, they know a thing or two about how to win in life. Of all of the things my parents ask of me and my sister, the rule they are the most stern about is, if you're going downstairs after midnight, you have to bring someone with you. Ever since we first moved to this house, they would remind us of this rule every chance they got. They'd randomly bring it up at the dinner table or before we'd go off to school. Sometimes, if they heard footsteps in the hallway at night, one of them would get up from bed and walk with us to wherever in the house we were going. The strangest thing about it was that me and my sister never really had any reason to go downstairs at night anyways. Our rooms, the living room, the kitchen, and pretty much everything else we use was upstairs. Sure, downstairs had a games room and some stuff we maybe needed to pull out from storage from time to time. But overall, I couldn't really think of a scenario where we'd need to go downstairs after midnight. My sister and I would ask my parents about it sometimes. Why do we have this rule? What happens if we break it? They would usually deflect, change the subject, or say, "We'll tell you when you're older, dear." As I got older and older, the fact that my whole family slept upstairs, in a large 2-story house, mind you, became increasingly weird to me. I was curious about what exactly was going on. So, fresh off my 20th birthday, I decided to conjure up a situation where I'd absolutely need to head downstairs after 12 a.m. "Mom, I left my laptop in the games room and I need to polish up a paper that I'm submitting tomorrow." Lame excuse, I know. She was skeptical and pushed back a little bit. "Can't I get up early tomorrow and finish up the essay in the morning? Why did I leave this assignment until the last minute?" I was able to assuage these questions pretty easily. I thought it was due 2 days from now. I thought my laptop was in my room. I'm a little bit stressed and I won't be able to sleep if I don't finish it, etc. So she ultimately obliged. We made our way down the small staircase and arrived at the door leading to the downstairs area. Before my mother opened it, she turned to me. "Okay, he's likely going to latch onto me. Make sure I don't open the door to the backyard, okay? Make sure I'm with you at all times. You can pull me if you need to." I thought she was kidding. She opened the door. Our downstairs area has another small living room, a small kitchen, and a hallway that leads to our games room and our storage area. I'd accidentally left my laptop in the games room, so as we entered, I immediately turned towards the hallway. I thought my mom would follow me. Instead, I saw her, just standing there, shivering, jittery. Her gaze was fixed on the window in the kitchen. It's a big window, with the blinds usually pulled up. The window was a peek into our large, mostly empty backyard. I looked at my mom confusedly, as she continued her uninterrupted stare. Slowly, she started walking to the door to our backyard. "Mom, what are you—" That's when I saw him, pressed against the window from the outside. His face was obscured by the darkness, but I could see his eyes, wide open. Wider than eyes should go, otherworldly. He looked focused, excited. My mom continued walking to the door. I grabbed her as hard as I could and pulled her away, back to the staircase leading upstairs. I closed the door behind us. It took my mom a moment to snap out of it. She spent another minute staring at the door to the downstairs area, meekly trying to open it and go back to where she was previously walking to. When she finally pulled herself together, "What the fick was that? Did you get your laptop, hun? Mom, what the fick was that outside the window?" Mom's reaction was weird, a mix of annoyance, concern, and fear. She finally responded, "Terrible things happen when we talk about him too much. As long as we go downstairs in pairs of 2, we're always okay. No one's let him in yet." And that was that. I continued asking her as we made our way upstairs, but she just flat out ignored me at this point. I had no idea what to do. I wanted to tell my sister, who was generally super carefree, but part of me thought that it'd only freak the hell out of her and achieve nothing. I tried bugging my dad about it, but he also deflected. At most, sometimes he'd say something like, "We just wanted to make sure we could give you and your sister a comfortable upbringing," and then walk away. What the fick? It's been 2 years since me and my mom went downstairs together after midnight. Since then, we've continued to follow the rule, and we'd thankfully never run into any problems. I've tried to convince my parents that we should think about downsizing and moving somewhere else, but they'd always say stuff like, "That isn't how this works, dear, and as long as we play it safe after midnight, we'll be okay." That brings me to why I'm writing this today. My parents have been gone for the week, visiting family in another state. My sister left earlier this evening to go to a sleepover with her best friend. I'm home alone, for the first time in forever. I don't usually have my phone on me. It takes me a couple of hours, at least, to read and respond to text messages. I've always been lazy about it. I recently took a look at my phone to see a missed text message from my sister. "Hey, I might have accidentally left the downstairs door open, just for your information. Please close it whenever you get a sec." She sent this text message 4 hours ago. I read it at 10 minutes past midnight. I'm writing this from the closet in my room. So far, I think I'm okay. Maybe she's misremembering and she kept the door shut. The only thing I'm worried about is that I'm starting to shiver a little bit, and I have this inexplicable urge to get out from my hiding spot so that he can find me. Story 2. Right off the bat, I want to get this out there. I do not believe in ghosts, or did not, that was, until my experience last week. Now I'm not too sure. What changed my mind? My night at a creepy roadside motel. I guess by definition all roadside motels can be described as creepy. Nearby highways, dimly lit parking lots, shady characters hanging out of doorways smoking. And the one me and my girlfriend stayed in last week where I had this paranormal experience was no different. A place well and truly stuck in the 50s called The Lodge. We found it just off the I-95 in the middle of Maine. We were on our way to Canada to attend a wedding in the province of New Brunswick and were driving because 2 weeks earlier my girlfriend had had the great idea of taking the scenic route, basically because she hates flying. Why not? I had thought at the time. What else could be more enjoyable than a nice summer drive up through Maine? It turned out that a lot of things could have been more enjoyable. For the scenic route came with a lot of rain, and not much else. A storm coming off the Atlantic pounded us the moment we left Boston. The music in our car accompanied non-stop by the swishing of windscreen wipers. We had been due to stop at the night in Portland on the coast with a friend, but that morning he had called to say his mother in New York was sick, and he would be spending the weekend with her. Never mind. Why don't we stop somewhere else for the night? And that is where the roadside motel comes in. It was just before sunset that we pulled into its parking lot. Over the noise of the storm, I asked, "Is the place abandoned?" Which was not an unreasonable question since half the doors and windows in the U-shaped courtyard were boarded up. My girlfriend simply pointed to a small office, where a neon light flickered that read, "The Lodge." Just below the sign, through a dirty window, sat an old lady behind a desk, watching us. I got out into the rain. Flashes of lightning zigzagged across the black sky as I jogged between the little rivers forming on the broken tarmac. Between the rolling thunder, you could hear the drones of the passing vehicles on the nearby I-95. Upon my entrance into the office, a room which smelled of a mix of cigarettes and mothballs, the old woman merely stared at me, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "Are you open?" I asked, water dripping from my coat onto the stained carpet. The old woman did not say anything, only continued to watch me with her hollow eyes. Then, like she had been considering my request, began to nod slowly. "Okay, how much is a room?" She rose from the chair, placed on the counter a set of keys, which had the number 66 attached as a tag. "Okay. Yes. At this point you turn around, get back in the car and hit the highway. It was that part in the horror movie where the lead role finds a staircase descending into darkness, and yourself, from the safety of the audience, are screaming, 'Don't go down there, stupid.' But what do they always do? They always go down. I suppose it wouldn't be such a great story if the character slams the door shut and leaves the killer waiting in the dark, twiddling his thumbs. Would it? But I digress. At the old woman sliding the keys forward, I got out $20 and waved it in the air like a white flag. $20 for the night? The old woman nodded and pointed at the keys. I glanced out of the window towards the car. Lightning momentarily illuminated my girlfriend in the steam-up car, nervously watching me. Should we stay here? I turned back round to the woman and grabbed the keys. Thanks, I muttered, and headed back out into the rain. Upon entering the car, I dangled the keys in front of my girlfriend. Friendly woman, I said cheerily. Though she said business was quiet tonight. Yeah, just a bit, my girlfriend replied, looking round the dark courtyard. It's kind of creepy here. Why don't we head straight on to Canada tonight? Nah, should be fine. I shifted the car in gear and trundled it over to near room 66. One night won't hurt us. Famous last words. Surprisingly, room 66 was fairly modern. Whitewashed walls, a widescreen TV, refrigerator, clean ensuite bathroom, potted flowers, mirrors. It almost eased our nerves of being the only guests in this run-down motel during the middle of a storm. Of course, there was a door, a locked door that is, at the back of the room, which at the time we assumed was a small cleaning closest. I tried the handle and afterwards forgot all about it as we each took showers, then settled into bed. My girlfriend, who would have been able to take a siesta on the edge of a cliff during a hurricane, fell swiftly to sleep. But for me it took much longer, tossing and turning until I finally drifted off. I woke around 2 a.m. and that is when the funny business started. It began with a noise on the roof. Now it wasn't the pit-patter of rain upon the flat roof. No, it sounded like footsteps, as if someone was pacing up and down. Okay, I thought, it's a bird. There is a bird on my roof. It's just a bird. Yet the more I told myself that, the more frantic the steps became. Until suddenly they stopped. I lay underneath the sheets, listening. The rain had ceased, and the storm moved on, but still the howling wind whipped around the courtyard outside. Relax, I told myself, and got up to go to the toilet, using the dim lights in the parking to guide my way to the ensuite bathroom. Now, it was as I was in the middle of my business that the door to the bathroom, which I had purposely opened to full extent, began slowly creaking closed by itself. My initial reaction upon seeing it in my peripheral vision was that the ground must be uneven. But then my brain began working on overtime to determine if the door had done that earlier. No, it hadn't. We were on perfectly flat ground. So now I'm doing my business in a race against time against this slowly creaking door. And the bathroom, having no natural light, is in near total darkness. And that is when my heart starts beating fast because I have a very strange feeling that there is someone stood in the bathtub, no other than a little girl, watching me. The moment that door closes, I know that I am toast, and I would have my throat ripped out by whoever, or whatever, is standing there. In the last moment, I lurched for the door and jammed my fingers between the gap, flicking on the light switch. There was no one in the bathtub. It was just my imagination. I stood there panting, my body covered in a thin layer of sweat. I put the door back into its position, fully open, and waited for it to move again, disproving my theory of the perfectly even ground. It did not move a millimeter. I moved it into another position. Maybe it was the angle you had to get right for it to move. No, it remained in place. Okay, that's creepy. I turned the lights off and returned to bed, where I lay motionless, staring up at the ceiling while my heart pounded in my ears. That is when I saw a silhouette move past the window outside. It was a faint silhouette, but all the same. Something did walk past. I sat up, watching the curtains and the dim lights in the parking lot. It could have been the old lady from the office, maybe checking on something. The old lady who never said anything and accepted my $20. Hey, I said, shaking my girlfriend awake. No time to act brave now, no sir. Request dismissed, sir. Hey, Emily, I continued, shaking her harder. Wake up, God damn it. But she just lay asleep, or unconscious. I felt a plunge of fear. And that's when the parking lot light went out, casting the room into total darkness. Wake up, Emily! I wanted to scream, but no words came out. And then I heard a key being placed into the lock of that door on the other side of the room, the one that we had assumed was the cleaning closet. And the key slowly began to turn, until the lock clicked. And even though I could not see it due to the darkness, I felt a draft of cold air and knew it had drifted open. Oh, fick, oh, fick, oh, fick. I'm thinking, sitting there next to my unconscious girlfriend, shivering with fear. "What do you want?" I called out feebly. I was answered by the flick of a light switch, revealing that what lay behind that door. It was a corridor. There couldn't be a corridor, though. The motel was a small U-shaped courtyard of single units. There was surely not enough space. Yet right before my eyes was a secret passage. I got out of bed. Yes, that's right. In my PJs, I got up and started inching towards the corridor. Why? I don't know why. Something was drawing me in. It was like my body had a mind of its own and was taking me towards the corridor. "No," I croaked, trying to convince my body to stop. I could only control the neck muscles. However, so I turned to look at my girlfriend in the bed, to try and plead with her to wake up and save me from the imminent disaster that I was soon to befall. But as I turned my neck, I quickly found that she was awake, watching me with hollow and lifeless eyes like that of the old lady at the desk. "Millie," I stuttered. She rose her finger to lips, shushing me. Then she grinned and blood spilled out of her mouth and ran down her chin. "What the fick?" I never got to finish the sentence because the force that was pulling my body had brought me into the middle of this secret corridor. On either side, it ran off into darkness. There were other doors that lined the passage, doors which all had the number 666. Then, out of the darkness, one end of the corridor began to glow red. It grew brighter. And strangely, I could feel a throbbing, like somewhere down there was a beating heart. I turned my head away, and as I did, I glanced back into my room, where I saw that my girlfriend was now standing beside the TV, her body slumped, her face hidden by her hair, as if she was possessed. "Emily!" I tried to scream, but yet again, no words came out. The corridor glowed so brightly now I could feel the heat on my skin. The next part was the worst. From behind the doors that lined the corridors came the sound of voices. People I knew. A friend who had passed away long ago started calling my name, beating against the door with his fist. He calling to me to let him out, telling me it was my fault he died. How long I stayed in that corridor for I don't know. It might have been a minute, maybe a day. Who knows, maybe I'm still trapped there. Perhaps in one of those rooms, waiting like my friend for the next victim to be ensnared in the trap. Somehow, however, I don't know how, I found myself back in the car, driving down I-95. I was shaking violently, and my girlfriend lay in the passenger seat unconscious. I pulled right off the highway and made it to the nearest town, where I collapsed at the front door of the nearest house, babbling incoherently about demons and witches and corridors and motels. It's been a week now, and my girlfriend is still not awake. That night, she was airlifted to Maine Medical Center, where it was diagnosed that she was in a coma. I gave my statement to the police about what happened at the motel. They don't believe me. Of course they don't, would you? An officer told me that the lodge closed in the 60s after a father murdered his whole family there one night. But that's my story. Emily's family are here in the hospital and are refusing to speak to me. They think I tried to murder her. I rang my folks, and they flew out a few days ago and are with me now. My dad's been sorting out a lawyer because he heard whispers of myself being charged if Emily fails to wake up. I'm sharing this account because I don't know who else to turn to. Maybe I'm mad, but I experienced something dark and disturbing last week in that motel. Story 3. When we were kids, growing up in the small town of Harvest Ridge, we found a treehouse. It sat shrouded in the heart of the forest that our parents had always warned us about, the Whispering Woods. Our gang, consisting of me, Maddie, Sarah, and little Timmy, were always looking for adventure, and the allure of the forbidden was too much to resist. It was a crisp October afternoon, the time when the leaves were changing, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson. We'd promised to stay near the edge of the woods, but youthful curiosity is a powerful thing. The sight of the treehouse, nestled in the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, was the most magical thing we'd ever seen. "Guys, think of all the cool stuff we can do up there." Maddie was the de facto leader, his bright blue eyes always full of mischief. "Are you sure we should?" Sarah, ever the voice of reason, asked, her brown eyes flicking between us nervously. Timmy just clutched his teddy bear tighter, his tiny body trembling. Ignoring their reservations, I stepped forward. "Let's just check it out. We'll be back home before dinner." The climb was daunting, the wooden rungs creaking ominously under our weight. But when we finally scrambled inside, it was like entering another world. It wasn't the cozy den of childhood dreams we'd imagined. Instead, it was a stark, grim place filled with strange symbols etched into the walls, dark stains on the wooden floor, and an unsettling stone altar in the center. "Guys, this doesn't look right," Sarah said, her voice a bare whisper. "What's all this stuff?" Maddie asked, poking at a pile of odd, bone-like trinkets. And then Timmy screamed. He was pointing at a corner, where a crude drawing depicted a monstrous figure, surrounded by smaller, kneeling figures. Beneath the drawing were words, scrawled in a dark, rusty color. "The chosen must feed the silent one." We left the treehouse quickly, fear replacing our initial curiosity. We promised each other we'd never go back, and for a while, we kept that promise. But then, Timmy went missing. The town searched but found nothing. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. We were devastated. But a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. The treehouse, one night, unable to bear the guilt and the uncertainty. I snuck out and returned to the Whispering Woods. What I saw there still haunts my dreams. The treehouse was glowing, a sickly green light pulsating from its windows. Hushed whispers echoed around the woods as cloaked figures shuffled into the treehouse. I hid, watching in horrified silence as the ritual unfolded. Their leader stood by the altar, a familiar teddy bear in his hands. "The silent one demands. The chosen shall answer," he intoned, and the woods seemed to shiver in response. I ran, the image seared into my brain. The treehouse wasn't just a treehouse, it was a sacrificial altar, and we'd walked right into it. We'd given them their chosen, I told the others. We told our parents, the police, anyone who would listen. They didn't believe us, of course. They searched the woods and found nothing. The treehouse was gone, as if it never existed. All that remained was an empty clearing and the echo of our guilt. The town declared Timmy a lost cause, a heartbreaking mystery that would never be solved. The rest of us were sent to therapists, told we'd invented the whole thing as a way to cope with the trauma. But we knew the truth. Weeks turned into months, and then years. We grew up, but the shadows of our childhood lingered. We never spoke about Timmy or the treehouse, but it was always there, a silent specter haunting our lives. I eventually moved away for college, the need to escape Harvest Ridge overwhelming. But like all nightmares, it drew me back in. Maddie, the spark in his eyes long extinguished, called me late one night. "We found another one, another treehouse," he whispered, his voice trembling, "in another forest on the other side of town." My heart sank. "Maddie, we can't go through that again." I think I saw Timmy," he said, and the line went dead. Coming back to Harvest Ridge was like walking into a ghost of my past, a snapshot of a time that was both innocent and horrifying. The town was still the same, save for the haunted looks in the eyes of those who remembered what had happened. And Maddie, he was still there, rooted in our shared past, unable to escape the shadow of the treehouse. As for Sarah, she had severed ties with us shortly after we burnt the original treehouse. The trauma of what had happened, the loss of Timmy, it was all too much for her. She moved overseas, seeking solace in distance and disconnection. Her absence was a palpable void, a missing piece in our fractured group. With the news of the second treehouse, I tried to contact her, but my calls went unanswered. It was clear she wanted nothing to do with Harvest Ridge or anything that reminded her of our shared past. I couldn't blame her. If I could have escaped it all, I would have. But Maddie was here, and I couldn't leave him to face it alone. The sight of the new treehouse sent shivers down my spine. It was an eerie mirror of the first one, nestled in the foreboding branches of an ancient tree. The silence around it was suffocating, the air heavy with an unseen dread. The pulsating glow of the symbols seemed more potent, more threatening. It was as if the treehouse was alive, breathing, waiting. We were no longer the naive, adventurous children who first discovered that cursed treehouse. We were adults now, forged and hardened by the fires of our past. Our hands, once used for climbing trees and playing catch, now held cans of gasoline and bags of salt. We had done our research, read up on rituals and ancient cults, anything that might give us an edge. This time, we weren't going to be victims. We were going to fight. We waited, hidden in the underbrush, our hearts pounding in sync with the ominous drumbeat that echoed from the treehouse. One by one, The cloaked figures emerged and disappeared into the night, leaving the eerie glow of the treehouse behind. Matty was the first to move. He approached the treehouse with a grim determination, his jaw set and eyes hard. I followed, every fiber of my being screaming at me to turn back. But we had come too far. We had to end this. Stepping into the treehouse felt like stepping into a nightmare. The symbols, the altar, the heavy air of malevolence. It was all as we remembered. But in the corner, a small figure huddled. Timmy. He looked just as he did the day he disappeared, his clothes tattered and dirty, his teddy bear clutched tightly in his arms. But his eyes, they were different. They glowed with an ethereal light, as though some strange power had taken residence within him. When he saw us, he didn't cry or call for help. He merely pointed to a chilling message on the wall. The Silent One is fulfilled. The Chosen will return. With Timmy safely in our arms, we escaped the nightmarish treehouse. We poured gasoline around it, creating a perimeter with salt, before setting the entire place ablaze. We stood there, watching as the unholy monument to the Silent One was swallowed by angry flames. In the days that followed, we took Timmy to the hospital. He didn't speak or react, his glowing eyes the only sign of the otherworldly presence within him. His parents, overjoyed and terrified in equal measure, thanked us for bringing their son home. But we knew, deep down, that Timmy hadn't really come home, not all of him. A month after Timmy's return, the hospital caught fire. It was a clear, calm night, with no sign of arson or electrical malfunction. Yet, the building burnt to the ground, an eerily familiar sight for Matty and me. We rushed to the hospital, hearts pounding with a dread we knew all too well. The fire was relentless, an inferno that resisted every attempt to quench it. It wasn't until dawn broke that the flames finally died down, leaving nothing but ash and ruin in their wake. They never found any bodies, not a single trace of the patients or staff. The entire town mourned. But Matty and I shared a silent understanding. The hospital, the fire, the missing people, it was all too familiar. It felt like the treehouse, the Silent One, all over again. When we returned to the site of the burnt hospital, we found one thing intact amid the rubble, a small burnt teddy bear, Timmy's teddy bear, and scrawled in the ash beneath it was a chilling message. The Chosen has awakened.